So what's more important, money or time? Well, if you got a lot of time, but not a lot of money, you might say money's more important. And if you got a lot of money, but not a lot of time, you might say time's more important. I'm going to tell you they're both important. But to me, time is far more valuable because if you lose your money, you can always make more. But when you lose your time, you can't get it back. Today, we're talking with the expert about time. He's the author of The Time Optimized Life. Can't wait. Let's rock.
Here's your host, Matt O'Neill.
So what's the one thing that we can't get back that is probably the most valuable resource in our life? That thing is our time and how we spend it. Some days my wife will look at my calendar and she'll see meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting to home. And she'll say, Matt, there's no room in there for you to eat lunch or take a bathroom break. And she'll be really worried about me, as she should be. So my wife is incredible. And so she's now learned to look at my calendar ahead of time because she loves me so much. And she hates to see me get all frazzled because I don't make good use of my time. And she'll put in a block called lunch on my calendar just to give me a little bit of space. But am I really optimizing my time when I'm running to 6 or 7 meetings in a single day? You know, it may look like a productive day, but if at the end of the day, I feel drained and useless for my family, that wasn't the best use of my time. Today, I'm so excited about the conversation because time is so much more important than money. If we lose money, we can get it back. As soon as we spend our time, it's gone. And so I'm constantly wondering and reading about and taking courses on and learning from experts about how to best use my time. And today we've got one of the top experts on time in the world. He's the author of the newly released book, The Time Optimized Life. It's David Buck. David, welcome to the Good Mood Revolution podcast.
Such an honor to be here. And I love that your wife is helping to make you proactive in the use of your time.
Yes, and she's lovely. She loves me very much. She cares for me very much. But I'll run myself absolutely ragged if without the guardrails. And it's like I'm trying to squeeze as much life as I can into my time, but then the quality of my time is not, really great. So I know you talk a lot, in the 90s and early 2000s, there was a huge push on time management. And now you've got a whole new twist on time, and that's time optimization. What's the difference between just time management and time optimization?
So in all deference to those people who love the phrase time management, I don't. Nothing wrong with it. We all manage our time. However, for me, management usually means reactive. And the word manage usually means you address the situation that comes at you. You can manage it well. But what happens is for so many people and clients that I work with is that it's that last in, first out. They receive something, they want to handle it, they move on, they don't prioritize. And so manage to me is reactive. And as I tried to flip the script, I found that the word optimized worked better for me because optimized is being proactive. It's also continuous. You're continuously trying to improve the use of your time and being proactive about it. And that allows people to be put into a situation where they then get better ownership of their time and can also negotiate when people want to take their time from them.
Yeah, and it's very interesting language you used right there. Take their time from them. Why do you say
That
it like
happens because so many times, pun intended, I guess you could say, we have people that will come to us, whether it doesn't matter if you're a parent, your children want your time, justifiably so. If you're a boss, your employees want your time. Flip flop it. If you're subordinate, your boss wants your time. So we are faced daily with people who come to intrude upon our use of time. And if you haven't proactively understood the structure of what your day is going to be like, your week or whatever, then you're in a disadvantage because it's hard for you to then say no. It's hard for you to maybe challenge back what's happening because you haven't prioritized what's important to you for that particular block of time, whether it's a day or a week.
Yeah, and this is so important to good moods because the quality of our life is really the quality of the ways we choose to spend our time. And uh, a lot of people listening to this episode have a career. What are the common challenges that people face with career in time? Like, what are some of those common challenges?
I'll say again, another term I'm not very favorable of is work-life balance. I prefer work-life flexibility. The biggest challenge for people is they weigh so much emphasis of the value of who they are as an individual into their career. And so the challenge I push back to people is to say, you need to establish an overall, what I feel, life purpose statement. It's all encompassing. It can involve elements of your career, but it's what defines the unique you and what makes up you so that as you go to make decisions in life tied to your career, you go back to that and says, does this help define or fulfill my purpose statement? And I find when I've done that and clients do that, actually it helps their overall mood because they're able to get clarity more on the decisions that they're going to make in their life.
You said something extremely powerful, and that is we put so much of our self-worth or our own value based on our career success. And of course, I also am this way. And so, one of the reasons I'm stacking so many meetings and trying to squeeze so much into the time I have is to validate my worth as a human being. And I like this idea of saying, hey, um, is this really who I want to be? What's really my purpose? What's really my mission statement for my life? And uh, if I'm being honest, it's about the type of father I am and the type of husband I am and the way I show up for my family. So, this work-life flexibility. If most people are like me, and I think most people do prioritize time with their family, um, but most people that I know are also like me, and they spend more time thinking about and spending time at work. How can we make a shift here when we're tying our self-worth to how successful we are at work, but in our hearts we want to give our time to our family? How do we make this shift?
That's a great question. And for me, that's why I like the word flexibility, because I think any of us who've had a career where we're really satisfied or we're driving towards something greater within our career, again, I'm not discounting that at all. But what we want to do at that point is to develop what I call relationship capital. So you know that there are times in your life when you have to tell your family, I got a project at work. The next week, I need to be immersed in that because it's important to either you, your employer, but at the same time, while you're trying to build personal relationship capital, that hard work and the things that you're doing at work, you need to make sure that your employer understands what you're doing outside of maybe the norm. So then you build relationship capital at work. So when something happens in your personal life, you have the ability to say to your employer that, hey, I need to leave early the next few days because I've got this important event with my kids that I need to be a part of. And if you have built up that relationship capital that allows it easier for you to ask that. And so flexibility to me is relationship capital on both sides of the career, personal side of things, so that people understand when you have to shift and put more time in either one.
Yeah, I just found out last night that two of my children were awarded terrific kids. And each quarter in class, the Kiwanis organization, which is a charitable organization in our town, selects one girl and one boy from each class that they say exemplify great humanity traits and great scholastic traits. And at the same, the same exact day, both two of my daughters are going to be awarded with this really special honor. And it's Monday morning. And Monday morning is a really busy day for work. So, and a lot of times we're faced with these decisions. But one of my fail safes that I've developed for time is that family always comes first. And I know that that's a little bit easier for me to do because I own my own company and I can go ahead and move whatever priorities were on my calendar to make sure my family is my priority. But I like this idea of relationship capital, so that if I don't have, if you don't, if you're listening to this and you do have a boss and you're not just the owner that can do whatever you feel like doing with your time, that you've built up hopefully enough relationship capital with your direct supervisor that when something really cool in your family happens, you can say, hey, I'm going to go the extra mile for you at work. I'm going to give you 110%. But if something with my kids is going on, they come first. And if you can make that relationship work for them and they see how much value you add, then they should honor that if they're a good boss. I mean, so what are some of the most common challenges that people have? Like the average person, that we've got these issues to overcome with our time. What are some of these things? What are the biggest issues that the average person has to deal with time?
In my process and how I work with clients and individuals and teams, I have 5 main categories of which I break down people's abilities to manage their time. And then within that, there's 20 different segments. And the top 2 segments I'll talk about first is distractions. And I define distractions as an internal disruption. You allow yourself to be taken off of your task or to lose your focus. And so distractions are the number one challenge with people. And the biggest contributing factor to that is our smartphones. They have liberated us to a level of productivity that would seem foreign just 20 years ago. However, at the same time, all the social media that's within that smart device, all of the ways in which companies try to gain our attention have caused us to be able to have diminished focus. And so that's the most challenging one.
So the number one issue the biggest issue that we face is distraction. And I agree with you. And in our smartphones are constantly pulling at us to keep us distracted from doing the main priorities in our life. So what do we do about it?
So the example for me and distractions are my number one challenge as well. Part of it is because whether I've been in sales for most of my career, I'm now my own business owner. I have things automatically set up that if I see a client open an email, I'm there ready to react if I need to. I have purposely set up some elements of my business to distract me because I want to then be able to focus my attention. But in the case of how do I minimize it? So for this particular podcast that we're doing, I have quarantined my smartphone. It is off to the side here with it's turned off so that I can't hear a buzz. I can't hear anything that's going to want me to go, oh, what's happening over there? And then the second thing is anything in and around my immediate area that I know would distract me is out of the way. So every other thing on my computer is shut down so that way, again, there's not something that's going to come my way. So for us, just start with your environment. Take everything that is around you that you will find yourself distracted with and do something to get it out of the way or out of your purview so that when you're working on what you need to, you're focused on that one item.
I love that you said I'm going to quarantine my phone. I used to call putting my phone in phone jail, and I still do it. It's my number one way to get present and be focused. And I know as soon as I open that phone, I can get completely sucked into it. So I was just at an event this past week with a men's group I'm a part of called GoBundance, and one of the elders, one of the founders, Pat Hyben, was speaking, and he was giving a speech about his life story. And he's a incredibly successful man in all phases of life, in his family and with his work and with his relationships. And it was really a fascinating speech, and I wanted to be engaged. So what I did is I found myself with my phone, and I pull it out of my pocket because it's just like my habit, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, no, I don't want to look at it. So I turned it off, and I put it back in my pocket just as you had suggested, and it's turned off. So the next time I went to pull it out, it was off, and that's a little bit annoying. I have to power it back up now. But all of a sudden, he said something that had spurred me to email someone. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is a great idea. I'm going to go ahead and email my wife this idea. And the idea that he had said was he's really wealthy. He's created a lot of success, financial success. And when his children turned 16, they were required to get a job. And I thought, man, that's a really great thing. And I talked to him about it afterwards. Just I'm kind of veering off on a tangent here, but it was really powerful for me at the time. He said, yeah, playing sports is great. My girls played sports, but now that they're 30, the thing that's helping them the most in their life is not the lacrosse, although that helped them. It created work ethic and teamwork and camaraderie. The thing that's helping them most is that they learned how to work for someone, and they learned how to work for themselves, and they learned about money. Because now the majority of their life is not lacrosse playing. It's actually being a productive member of society. So that idea struck me so much. I was like, okay, great. So I open my email and I send it, and then I check my next email. And then that took me on a tangent. And then I opened the social media site, and then I opened another social media site. And then before I know it, 15 minutes of his presentation is completely gone because I was completely distracted in my same loop that I always do when I turn my phone on. And I woke up from it, and I'm like, wait a minute, no, I really want to be here listening to Pat Hyben. So I turned my phone off again and put it back in my pocket. And distraction gets me all the time.
It is like I've had two parents and then siblings who smoked. I was the only one in my family who doesn't smoke. But I've been around enough smokers that I recognize, for me, it is like the battle my parents went through when they tried to quit smoking. That is, to me, how prevalent the digital age is for us, and how successful companies are to take us off what we're doing. And what you went through, to me, is just like anyone who's picking up a cigarette. And before they know it, they're like, how did this cigarette get in my hand? And
it's because
it's
dopamine, right? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, if I got a new exciting email, dopamine hit. If somebody liked my last post in my social, dopamine hit. If then I go into the sports website and my sports team did something good, dopamine hit. And so it's just like a cigarette. It's addiction to these dopamine hits that we get from this distraction. So just some practical tips that I do with my cell phone is when I go to bed, I turn it on airplane mode.
Very good.
So the next morning, when my alarm rings and I pick up the phone to turn off the alarm, no notifications are there because it's on airplane mode. And I don't switch it off airplane mode. I then set it back down because I can't get sucked into it because no notifications are there. And I know that I'd have to go in and read and turn off airplane mode, and that's going to distract me from what I want to do this morning. I then go and journal and read and then exercise, and I work on myself. And after all of that self-work is done, then I come to my phone. At the nighttime when I'm coming home, on the drive home, I turn off the phone in the car so that my brain starts to shut down that addiction to distraction. And by the time I walk in the house, I am ready to be present. And these are the two times I really want to get separate from my phone, is in the morning when I'm working on myself, and in the evening when I'm with my family. So those are a couple time distraction hacks that I've found for myself. David, what else do you like to do to stop the distraction?
Well, first and foremost, I love what your morning routine is about, because just the fact that you are focused on either journaling, reading, the personal care, you are much more productive than the average person who just gets up, either dives into social media or dives into uh, other aspects without preparing themselves physically and then mentally for the day. So kudos on that. Anyone listening to this, that I would highly encourage them to try to emulate what you do, because they'll find they're so much more productive during the day.
But without that airplane mode, I'm telling you, if I skip it and there's even one little red thing, I'm like, I'll get right in the loop, and 20 minutes could go by out of my journaling, meditation, prayer, reading, exercise time. And I'm like, it's the same way I woke up from Pat Hyben. I'll wake up from being stuck in my phone in the morning and say, I just wasted all of my time on completely non-productive stuff that's not helping me in the slightest. And I like throw it away in disgust. Like, what? This phone, if you quit cigarettes, you quit and you never go back to them. With the phone, we don't quit forever. It's even harder. It's even harder. It's like an addiction that we have to have close to us that we can't ever fully get rid of. Maybe we could. I don't know. Maybe we could go without a smartphone. My brother has got a flip phone. No internet. It's just a flip phone. And people laugh at him about it. But he said he don't want to have his email there. He doesn't want to be working when he's not working. And that
is structured time that, again, it would be interesting if we all had to live with a flip phone for a week, what life would be like in that particular case.
It would probably be better.
I think so.
Yep. Yeah, social media isn't really helping me. Reading about the Detroit Lions sports news isn't really helping me. Checking my email incessantly isn't really helping me. I think I could get all my email done in one hour block a day, and that would be sufficient for the whole day. All right, well, let's move on, because I could spend all day on distraction. Yeah, obviously, I'm fired up about it. Stuff. But the number two biggest issue we have is procrastination.
Correct. And procrastination is actually the biggest single economic challenge, as well as time management challenge, meaning of all of the sectors that I evaluate or people self-assess on, procrastination has the biggest economic negative impact. And I define procrastination as something you are intentionally delaying on that will hurt you because of that delay. And whether that is not meeting a commitment, whether it causing an economic difficulty, or you compound a variety of other things that you have to do, because by pushing that off, it kind of like you're starting to flood, because all of these activities continue and there's no release valve from that.
So how do we combat procrastination?
Typically, it's because of a lack of definition to what you need to do. Not enough specificity. So I use this example a lot. So let's say we want to paint our bedroom. That's a goal that you want to do. I'm going to paint this bedroom. Well, if you leave it at that, then it's easy to push that off. Well, okay, I'm going to paint it tomorrow. I'm going to paint it next week. But until you break it down to say, there's a lot of things I have to do to be able to say I have completed that activity. So my paint color, the supplies I'm going to use, any prep work that I need to do I have to prime? So typically procrastination is because you haven't defined all the details that you need to do behind that task. And usually I tell people, if you can't define it and has to be broken down into a bunch of different things, then make those themselves individual tasks so that you show progress. And people procrastinate because they don't see progress. It's like, well, I started to try to do this. I didn't. So I'm going to push it off till later. Maybe it'll get better. And it never gets better.
Yeah, I like that. So sometimes a light bulb will go out, and I'm the designated light bulb changer in my house, and it'll be out for a couple weeks, and Katie will say, "Hey, did you notice that light bulb's out?" And I'll say, "Man, interesting. I did notice that, and I'm planning to change that." And she said, oh, "Okay, yeah, I figured you were planning to change that." So to me, the steps are not that many, but I do have to go to the garage and get the ladder. And that's the only step. Go to the garage and get the ladder and grab the light bulb. So why do we procrastinate on such little things that could, we really could handle within a few minutes?
Because we probably lack either we have an overpacked schedule, or we don't have enough structure in our schedule. So even the simple things then have a tendency to be put off, or we have the reactive nature of last in, first out. So you're like, I'm going down to the garage to change the light bulb. Oh, look, the garbage can's empty. Let me go ahead and do that. You do the garbage and then you forget about the light bulb. Or you're walking by and the Tigers are on TV. And, let me sit and just watch a little bit of the game. And then before you know it, it's an hour later and you're going to bed. And it's like, you know what? It's a light bulb. It's not that big of a deal. I'll put it off till another day.
Yeah. Yeah. But it always feel better when I change it.
Exactly.
I feel better
and
when
if you don't change that one, you don't change the next one, soon you're sitting in the dark. So even the little bit of tasks over time can be a big deal if you don't do them.
So that was distractions and procrastination. I know you said there were 5. What are the other 3?
So the other 3 related to particularly people focusing on their time is the flip side to distractions is what I call interruptions. That is defined almost the same way, except for the fact that interruptions are external disruptions, and typically we don't have a lot of control over those. They come at us and we fail because we haven't planned well. That's where we have the hard time negotiating, because if you can't justify them wanting to interrupt you, then you have a tendency to want to try to please people, and that ends up disrupting your work schedule for what you needed to accomplish.
Yeah, so if we're not purposeful enough, we can allow those interruptions to take over our day. And I would say that the more purposeful we are, the more we're able to say, I don't have time for that at this moment, but I can get back to you at some point. So I really want the person listening to time optimize their life. What's some easy practical things that we can all do to start optimizing our time?
The first thing, and people might say, Dave, I've got a huge busy life. You're asking me to do something that's impossible, but you need to try to get to 7 hours a night of sleep. And so if you're at 5 right now, try to go to 6. But ideally, whether it's the CDC, the World Health Organization, any of the major medical clinics will tell you need between 7 and 9 hours of sleep. And so I usually like to say a third of your life should be with your eyes closed. And some people say that that's a dream. Literally, I can't do that. But that first step on the personal care element of sleep, if you can consistently get good sleep, you'll be surprised at how easy it is with the clarity to be able to do other elements you might be time challenged on. You find they're easier to overcome.
Great. Okay. So, I can't tell you how many experts have come on the show and said, sleep, prioritize your sleep. It feels like sleep is so useless because we're not getting anything done. And so I think that's why so many people will just not sleep. I'm notorious for thinking that I can get done a lot of things without sleep, but it's a good reminder for me to continue to prioritize that sleep. So after sleep, what are some other things for us to optimize our time?
Look at your calendar. So I don't necessarily push a particular type of calendar. So if you are a paper old school planner type, wonderful. If that works for you, I am all electronic. I love the flexibility that that provides. But ultimately, I would love people to get to a point where they're planning their calendar 2 weeks out. Now, if you're saying, great, Dave, that ain't going to happen, then start with at least the next day. So at the end of your day, look at your next day and say, what's important for me to do? And put that on your calendar and try to hold yourself accountable, because it's something physical you can see. Again, whether it's a planner or whether it's electronic calendar, you're physically visualizing what that day looks like, and that helps give you some understanding. And then as you get comfortable the next morning, verify that this is what I want to accomplish for the day. And so then you get into a cycle. Morning, evening, you evaluate what the day was, you readjust until eventually you do a rolling 2 weeks. So for example, right before we came on, it's a Friday. I spent about an hour planning out my next 2 weeks. And I call it wet cement planning, because wet cement takes a while to cure, to be hard. And so you have a period of time when you can adjust things like cement. If you have to re-cure it or refinish it into a different area, you can. That's the same principle there. Think of it as, I've got it laid out. There's a foundation, but I know I can change it if I need to, because you're going to have to.
That is powerful advice, and I'm not doing it. So, yeah, you're doing this wet cement calendar planning 2 weeks in advance of how do I want my calendar to be, and going ahead and planning it, I think is powerful. What are a couple other tips we could do?
So the other avenue behind that, once you get the calendar set up and you understand what the use of your time is, then I want you to be in a mindset to learn how to say no, and no in a professional way. And really, no becomes no, but, or can we look at this later? So a typical question I have used even with clients has been when they come to me for something, it's out of the blue. And if I have something I'm really working on, or there's a conflict with another client, I'll say, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being it's calm, it's peaceful, it's beautiful outside. 10 is it's a zombie apocalypse. How important is this, what you're asking me to do? And usually at that point, they stop and reflect and say, it's probably not as important, because they're coming to you because typically you're going to solve their time problem for them. And it's not necessarily as high a level as they think it is. So once you're proactive there, and when people get used to you, maybe politely and respectfully, with gentleness and respect, pushing back a little bit, they stop themselves before they come to you and say, if I bother Dave with this, is Dave going to tell me to go back and do something? So maybe I can figure this out a little bit more before I go to Dave.
Well, I know we could talk about time all day, but we don't have time to do it all day. So, how could people get in touch with you and learn more? Obviously, get your book, The Time Optimized Life. But if somebody wanted to reach out to you and work more with you, how would they do that?
So you can just go to Infinity Lifestyle Design, that's one word, .com. So an infinitylifestyledesign.com. And actually on the website, if you're like, hey, I'm not sure if I want to get the book, The Time Optimized Life, yet, great. Download chapter 1. So you'll find that there, and you can get a flavor of what the book is going to be like. And then obviously from there, you can take it. And if you want to purchase the book, the idea and the premise behind it is for you to be proactive with your time. You're going to be the owner and the keeper, and you're going to minimize the times that people come and want to disrupt what you're trying to do.
Dave, thank you for this. I have gained some valuable insights in my own life. I'm sure the person listening has as well. I appreciate you coming on the show.
My pleasure, Matt. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, guys, we'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode with Matt O'Neill.